Hi, I'm Brenda Erler, and I'm coming to you today in this video to talk about what prompted me to write the book, Learning to Be You. It's an inside job, recovery and healing for the loved ones of the substance addicted. So, as you can imagine, I married a substance addicted individual. It was love at first sight. I'm not kidding you. We met and were married within 3 months. I just need to share with you, though, that we lasted for 36 years until his death in 2017. And at the end, I totally adored the man. But let me share what happened is if you are dealing with someone that's a substance addict, it can be very tumultuous experience. I mean, honestly didn't know that I could get that angry at another individual. He was so for 10 years, he was a practicing addict. And there was an incident. I moved the family up to Sumas, Washington with my work, through my work. I actually worked at a oil and or natural gas transmission company for 36 years. And so we ended up moving up to an operations location. It was like a compressor station. And I hadn't really, at the time, I was quite unhealthy and probably did it with the intent to get him away from his friends, of course, who were the ones who were getting him drunk all the time. So anyway, I relocated my entire family, my husband, myself, my two children, up to Sumas, Washington, which was over 1,000 miles away from family and friends. And so here I was. Of course, he wasn't with his friends, but he met new friends that he could obtain drugs from. And so it just continued as we all would figure. So, well, while we were up there, he was drinking about every other day. Now, this is something that some of you may be aware of. What will happen is they feel horrible after they drink. So they'll get drunk and act like an idiot, or just give you a really hard time, and everybody is not happy. And the next day, they are so remorseful, um, that it breaks your heart. And they promise never going to do it again. Of course, the next day they drink again. It is so when it gets the worst, it's about an every other day thing. They'll go a day in between and then drink. So he wasn't constantly drinking. He would actually have a day in every other, pretty much. Well, one day we had one car up in Sumas, Washington. It's a very small town. It has about 700, had about 700 population, 700 people. I'm used to that because I grew up in a small town. I thought this would work for me. So he came to pick me up. I was about 2 miles from work and in the country. It was quite lovely that way. But he came to pick me up, and on the way home, he was pretty drunk and high, and I don't know what he'd been doing, and probably he didn't either. And luckily we were on a country road, so he wasn't too dangerous to get us home. Um, but we did get home, but on the way, I had finally had it. I went, oh my gosh, I am so tired of this. And I just finally said to him, you know what? Let's just end this, and you will be happier. I will be happier. Let's just call it quits. And you can go and do whatever you want to do, and I'll live my life. Well, of course, he wasn't happy with that. Remember, he's pretty drunk and high. Who knows what on? And so we get home and we go in the house. And if you are familiar with addicts and drug addicts, they know your buttons. And as they say in AA, they know the buttons to push because they're the ones who sewed them on. I thought that was so good because it's so true. he knew my buttons, and my buttons were always around my ability to be a good employee in the workplace. And the buttons that bothered me were when he would call me a slut or a whore or whatever. And refer to, they won't take you back. I'd been trying to go back to my main office for a few months because I was realizing this wasn't working up in this small town with these addicts. And I've been applying for jobs, and so that's what he brought out. That's the button he pushed was, oh, they don't want you back there because you're not, just giving you a bad time. So they love to do that when they're drunk. So at that time, he says, well, I'm going to go see my friend. And I went, no, you are not driving the car. I got the keys. I went and got my purse and I left. I get in the car and I'm getting ready to back out. We had to drive. We drove in. So I was getting ready to back out. But the car in reverse, I look up and there he is with the shotgun pointed at me in front of the car. I know it sounds horrible now. It's funny to me at this point, but it did rewriting this in my book, did bring up a lot of hurt feelings, I have to say. But I had been reading books about people who had had guns pointed at their heads, and I thought, you know what? I would just run. I mean, you're going to die anyway. You might as well just run. So I thought, hey, you know what you're going to do. So I put it in reverse and I backed out and I went. Well, we lived in this small town, Sumas, Washington, 700 people. I had one real good friend there, but they drank and drugged and had no problem with it. And so there was no way I could go to her house. So I went back out to my workplace. I pull in, I go out to find my boss. He's out in the yard with the foreman. They're both out there. So I go up to him and tell him, his name was Bill. Bill Lynn, my husband's name's Lynn. Now, he's gone now, but no judgment to him. Remember, I adored him at the end. He did get clean and sober. I'm going to just share this beginning story. So I said, Lynn shot the back of oh, by the way, I missed that part. So as I'm driving away, he shot the back of the car. So I go out to work, find Bill, tell him Lynn shot the back of the car. He goes, oh, we have to call the cops. And I went, so as a codependent, this may be something, if you are one as well, you understand this. I'm thinking how much I will suffer if I call the cops. So I don't want to call cops. So I say, no, not going to do it. He goes, oh, Wendy, we've got to. And I'm standing pretty firm on it. And he goes, what if we ask them to come out here first and you can talk to them? And that kind of sounded like a good idea. So I said, okay. So I agreed to it. So we went into the building and I called the cops and they put me on hold. And while I'm sitting there at my desk, this is after work, of course, nobody's there but the foreman, the superintendent, the manager, and me. And they put me on hold, and I can hear in the background. The neighbor said they heard several shots. I am like thinking, I mean, my first thought was, oh my God, she committed suicide. And I am hysterical. I am literally hysterical. And I mean, I'm, so anyway, in the meantime, while I'm waiting on the phone, at a neighbor that I had at where we used to live, drove up and let my son out of his car. Had brought my son. My son was at home with my husband, and when the neighbor came, he came to there was a tank there that he came and got. It was a molasses for cows. We lived out in the country. And he came to get that. And my husband went out and brought my son out and asked him, would you take my son over to my husband, my wife's work. And so we brought him over, which was good. Although I had no fear that he would harm my son. I really had no fear of that. I thought he would harm himself, but I didn't think he would harm my son. So in the meantime, they finally come back on the phone after I can hear everything they're doing, the police, and they said that they have him in custody. So at that point, my boss gives me a ride over to my home, and he's in the police. And I thought, I thought they were going to come over first, but oh, well, it's done now. And of course, they take him to jail because I lived in the state of Washington. And in Washington, in a domestic abuse situation, it's not up to the wife to charge, it is up to the state. And so, as you can imagine, the state charged him and they put him in jail. So, that later that day, he called me and asked me when I was going to come. I said, oh, no, not going to happen. You shot the back of the car. He probably didn't even remember. I don't think he did, actually. But what ended up happening from there, he was sentenced to, I think it was 6 months, which isn't too bad. Um, uh, since he didn't harm anyone, he did damage to the vehicle. So the judge ended up sending him to treatment. He went into a 21-day or maybe 28-day program at, I think it was I can't remember the name of the hospital. Anyway, in Bellingham, he ended up going there. And after the 21-day program, the idea was that he would come back and serve his sentence. And that's the train that we have here in my little town. It goes by and it has to honk. So we'll just let it go. So anyway, now I've got to get my train of thought back. So sorry. He, oh yeah, they ended up letting him go to like an outpatient treatment facility that was like a 3 month. So could come and go at that point, and he lived in a facility with other people, and they went to AA meetings and all of the things. So that was 90-day program there. So for about 4 months, he was in treatment, and in that time, I ended up moving back to Salt Lake City, and I'll tell you more about the story. You'll have to come back to hear the rest because there's lots of good things in this book. I want to share it with you guys. And I hope that you enjoyed this today. And thank you so much for joining me. It's been a beautiful journey, despite the fact that it sounds so scary. It's all been good. Thank you for being a part of this experience with me. Love you.